Welcome to our podcast. This is episode 1, where we are going to be talking about one hand up and one hand out. Let's jam.
Awesome. Well, excited to have you guys here. We want to kick this off and just tell you guys a little bit about ourselves, how we met, and why we're here, and the point of this podcast, which is a project that has been on both Houston and I's hearts for a very long time. So I'm sitting here with my good buddy, Houston McDowell, and we're about to wrap with you guys. So Houston, why don't you give the listeners a little bit of a background on you, like who you are, what you're currently up to, what you're doing, and then why you're here. And then we'll go into kind of how we met and why we're here.
Yeah, man. So this is a project that, like you said, Chad and I have been talking about for quite some time. You and I met at a good dear friend of ours. He's also a mentor of mine, Adam Farragali's house. And we'll get into this, I think, in future episodes. But I always say put yourself around like-minded people and people that are going to force you to elevate up in your life, right? Like to challenge you, to inspire you, to, get around people that are really, really good at different spaces of life that you want to elevate up and into. So that happened with me, just sheer luck, right? So like we were getting together, we do once a month at Adam's house. We get together, we have like fellowship, we play cards, we eat, all that stuff. So let's talk about how you and I met there, and then you just feel that energy right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Right?
So I couldn't agree more. It's about getting in rooms with people that have a higher level of consciousness than you.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes you have to pay to get in those rooms. Sometimes you might not be invited to the poker night, but you might have to pay to get into a mastermind or a group, and we talk a lot about that.
Right.
But when you get in those rooms with the people who are, in places that you want to be, right, you slowly just elevate. You naturally will elevate. The universe will lift you up, right, to match the surrounding folks that you're around. So, when Houston and I met, it was sort of this level of consciousness that we both were elevating to, and we saw in each other, and that led to some just amazing, very high level conversations, right, about the world, success, what it means, how other people are living and leading and empowering them to achieve financial freedom for themselves, and the mental discipline that goes along with that life and that lifestyle and creating a life by design. And just went down this amazing rabbit hole of this conversation and said, man, we need to share this message because we both felt called to, but we were both kind of keeping it to ourselves.
Totally.
We're both busy guys, and we'll get into what we're currently doing. And this project is something that was, like you said, was on our hearts. So after that night, we met at a coffee house, and we just sat there and just talked about all those topics that I just mentioned. And it was like, we both felt called, we'll probably talk a little bit about spirituality here in one of these episodes coming up, but, we both felt called by a higher power to share this information with a lot of people, and whoever's willing to listen, right? And we talk about being lighthouses and not tugboats. Our job is not to go out and convince people that this is the path, what we're going to talk about on the freedom side of things. But at the same time, if somebody is out seeking this information, we want to be beacons of light for what it takes to be successful in this world right now.
Totally.
So, yeah, man.
Yeah. So when you and I met at that coffee shop, we met there that morning at 9:00. I'll never forget it. And we're sitting across the table, just kind of jamming, talking. We started talking about spirituality, your story, my story, which I do want to talk a little bit about as an intro before we go into future episodes. But I remember you sat and you said, I'm not even sure what we're going to do together, but I can feel it's going to be really special. Yep. I don't even know why I'm here. And you said, I left this morning and I'll tell my wife, I'm going to meet up with Houston. Right. And she was like, what do you guys have on the agenda? And you're like, I don't actually know, but I know that we are both called and led to do something special.
Yep.
Right. And so we had coffee, we met, we literally wrote some things down, and I was like, this is what I want to spread to the world. Right. Like, I think people get caught in what I call imposter syndrome, and they feel like I'm not equipped, right? Like I'm not ready to talk about fill in the blank, whatever the subject matter is, right? And what one of my mentors always told me, and still does, is if not now, when?
Yeah.
Right. So we left that coffee house going, now we got to start scripting this stuff. We want to put it together. So here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, there's no better time than right now. If anybody, that whole tomorrow thing is a danger and it's a trap, right?
Yeah.
I'll do it tomorrow. I'll
Absolutely.
start tomorrow. like that is the detriment of a lot of people's success. The reason there's a lot of people not winning right now is because they're putting things off until tomorrow. It's that business they want to start. It's
Absolutely.
that group they want to join. It's that event they want to go to, right? They're just putting it off. And I mean, it's the downfall of a lot of folks right now. So we're here to talk about not only the problems that a lot of people are facing. When we're recording this, there's a lot of problems going on in the country that we're going to talk about. There's a lot of problems going on in the world.
Yeah.
But we're also here to provide solutions. So we're both very positive people, but both very realist about the things that we're all facing as a country, as a people, as a man, as a man right now.
Yeah.
So we're all, we're going to talk about those things as well as the solutions to those.
Yeah.
So tell the listeners a little bit about you. What's your background? What are you currently doing? What businesses are you in?
Yeah. So background on me, I'm in the middle of building. So I'll talk about family first because I think it's important. It's important to me. I know it's important to you. And I want to help to inspire how that can look and how it can look differently. In other words, there's no right or wrong. And I'll tell you why. So I'm in the middle of building a blended family, right? So I've got a son who's 11. His name's Hudson. And what's kind of cool, and I'm dropping this on you right now in the intro, is I will soon be engaged. Next month. I've already got the whole thing set up.
Amazing.
But so when this airs, she will see that I'd already talked about it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I say that because I'm in the middle of what I call building a blended family, right? Which is like, it's not the norm, but why is that not the norm, right? So we'll talk about that in future episodes too. One of our episodes is Ask Why, right?
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah.
And I'm building something that's really, really cool for myself and for my family. And that goes into my story, right? Like I went through a divorce, and that divorce was 4 years ago. Actually, September 5th will be 4 years, right? And man, it changed me. Like it literally changed me. And his mom and I get along great. We've fostered like a good relationship, but there were about 3 years of extreme pain during that time, right? And so part of the reason for me getting involved in this podcast is not just the business, but it's masculinity, right? It's like leading, knowing how to be a man. And I want to help to tell people my story and how I came out of that, right? Into what I call the light, what you refer to as the light. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm at now in terms of like family life and just what's being built personally. I have a great circle of friends, like what I would call high profile friends, right? Like people that I hold near and dear to my heart. My circle is not big. It's small and it's powerful.
Rather have 10 dimes than 100 pennies.
Absolutely. And so that's where I'm at. It's just kind of how I've cultivated my relationships, right?
Yeah.
Business, I'm involved in a few different businesses. I was in sales, selling medical supplies for 14 years. I led a team. I started out as just a sub rep, worked my way up, became, in my opinion, a practitioner in that space. Exited 2.5 years ago to start my own company, which then led to companies, plural. So I'm involved in a few different businesses now in the medical space, all of them. So also coach some people, some younger entrepreneurs. One of my callings is to help the person that I previously was, right? What I mean by that is that 25 to 32, 35-year-old man that's like trying to figure out his place. Both within his family and being a man and being a good leader and being a good friend, for me, being a good father. So I coach some people as well. So really 4 different businesses. So stay busy, and that's where I'm at, man.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Where are you proposing?
Lake Oconee.
Okay.
Which is in Georgia. It's like 45 minutes south of Atlanta.
Yeah. And how many kids does she have?
She has 2.
Okay.
So we'll have 3 kids between the 2 of us. So she's got a son who is 14.
Yeah.
Daughter that's 9. And then I've got a son that's 11.
Yeah. It's a nice blended family.
Yeah, man, it's a good spread.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
First time I've heard it.
Congrats, early. Thank you.
Yeah. And guys, on my end, so family is very, very important. That's why we're all doing this is to have the freedom so that we can do what we want, when we want, with who we want, for however long we want, with our families. And my wife and I talk about this life by design thing right now. And we're kind of in the middle of it, right? We have a little girl who's 18 months. We just had another little boy who's now 1 month.
Awesome.
Actually, today he's 1 month old. So if my voice is a little raspy, it's because I have a 1 month old and I'm not sleeping yet.
Yeah.
But we're in the process of building, the family. And where we moved to a city where we didn't know anybody, before, after we got married. When I first got started in business, I was selling copiers at Xerox, door to door out of college. So I got that sort of, that experience of getting your teeth kicked in, which I think is just invaluable. I always say it's the best job I never want to do again. So I sold copiers door to door for Xerox. I worked my way up. I was a sales manager, top producer in the company my second year. Ultimately, I have a couple stories that I could tell, but I kept feeling this pull towards real estate. I kept seeing it. I kept, a lot of the people that I was studying kept having this commonality of real estate. And I was studying money. I was studying wealth because I had always been fascinated with money. And we're going to talk a lot about money on this podcast. We're going to talk about all the things that they tell you not to talk about, which is spirituality, money, all of it, politics,
all of it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all that stuff
because we should be.
We should be.
Yeah.
There's a reason that they're telling everybody not to talk about these things because they're the most important, and they don't want people discussing them to find out that we're really all not that different.
Yeah.
Like 80 and 90% of us all probably agree on most stuff. It's the 10 or 15% on either side that's creating this violent pendulum swing that we're seeing in the world. We'll save that for another episode.
Can't wait. Yeah.
So, I would always been fascinated with money and figuring out how, people who had money had the power, they had control of their lives, right? And money is an amplifier. It's a magnifier of what's on your heart, right? If you're a good person and you get a lot of money, you're going to be a better person. If you're an asshole and you make money, you're going to be a bigger asshole. So if you're a good person, it is actually your fiduciary responsibility, it is your duty to become successful and make a lot of money if you are a good person at your heart, because you can help more people, right? There is no pride in being broke, right? That's actually a very selfish thing when you have the ability, there's an abundance of money on this planet. So if you're broke and you have an iPhone in your hand, it's a choice.
Yeah.
Right? Because all the information you need to become wealthy is right on that phone. You're just choosing not to look at it, and you're choosing to look at other stuff. And we'll talk about your inputs. What do people's algorithms look like? How are people's algorithms keeping them trapped in this kind of vicious cycle? So fascinated with money, figured out that salespeople can control their own checks, right? So that's how I got into commission only jobs selling copiers, but kept feeling this pull to real estate. I saw the people who had control, most of their wealth actually was in real estate, although they had these other businesses that were making active income. When you peeled back the layers of where their real wealth was, it was real estate. So I jumped in full time, right? Didn't have anything lined up, just quit my job.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
When did you jump? How long ago was that?
So that was over 6 years ago.
Okay.
6 years ago. So quit my job. I walked away from six figures. I mean, I was making good money and just left.
Yeah.
It was like, because it was that corporate ladder that was lined up, right? And it was, hey, contribute to your 401k. You'll be able to climb this ladder. You'll be a VP by the time you're 40, and now you can retire, at 60. Like, and I just looked at that and I was like, man, that's not for me. You
don't feel it. You don't feel it in your heart.
Don't feel it. I didn't feel it. And got out, tried to figure it out. My first year in entrepreneurship was just a freaking punch in the gut. Like
it always is.
Always is.
Always
and
is.
People who start their own business, they think that the marketplace owes them something because they had the courage to say, I want to be an entrepreneur. And now the marketplace owes you success. And it's like the opposite. Like you're going to get pummeled to your knees. And that's part of it.
Yeah.
And the only failure, like you cannot lose unless you quit. Right,
Totally.
Because failures are coming.
Totally.
You're going to fail. Like I think I started 4 or 5 businesses before I actually got one that had a little traction.
Yeah.
Right. And the first one that had traction for me was fixing and flipping houses. So I tried to be a commercial agent. I did some aerial, like I did some real estate photography. Like I tried to get in doing some different things.
Yeah.
And then ultimately like found this little niche in wholesaling and fixing and flipping, started making some good money.
Yeah.
Then what we'll talk about too is scaling and building partnerships.
Yep.
And that was what allowed me to pour some gasoline on my fire, was finding partners, like-minded individuals, other people, and realizing that you don't have to recreate the wheel, right? The blueprint is out there for success. The blueprint is out there for whatever business you're trying to create. Most likely someone has already done it, and most likely you can just take that blueprint and implement it and you will get the same result.
Yeah, absolutely. Rinse, repeat, and make it your own.
That's it.
Right.
And the people who are successful, who have made it to the top, most of them have this one hand down, like to help others up. You mentioned it just now, like my goal is to help people that were in the position I was in.
Yeah.
That's that one hand up, one hand down mentality. That doesn't mean that you're up on this pedestal looking down on everybody like I've made it. You're still reaching up to that next rung of the ladder, but you're also simultaneously reaching down to help that next person up.
Totally agree. Which is where I feel we both are now.
Yep.
I'm in that space, right? Like I know that there's another levels that I want to transcend into, both in business and in my family life and my fitness. We'll talk about that as well.
Yep.
But always searching to grow more in all different pillars of life. In my opinion, there's 4, and we'll get into that as well.
Sure.
But I do want to say something too, real quick for the listeners. What you described in your intro, Chad, is exactly why we're sitting across the table from each other. Because when we're at Adam Farragut's house, I knew. So if you're a listener to this podcast, and we hope there's many, you can feel someone's energy.
Yeah.
Really? Like in the first 3 to 5 minutes, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. And it was that energy, what, in my opinion, you gave off then. I was like, I want to be a part of something with this man. I don't know what, but something.
Yeah.
Right. And then the reverse is also true for you. Like there's something like this dude's into some of the same shit I'm into. He's obviously going places. He's also been some places as well.
Yep.
And the goal is to both continue to elevate ourselves and transcend into the next phase, into the next step, into the next chapter, while also that hand out that you talked about isn't from a pedestal. I mean, I'm still early in my entrepreneur journey, right? Like I figured some things out. I figured out what not to do. I've also had some of the failures that you've described, and we'll talk about those too.
Yeah.
But I've also had some success, right? Yeah. And I want to talk about all the above.
Yeah. And to kind of round out my story. So after, getting into that little niche, I started making a lot of active income, but it was very, very transactional, right? Yeah. So ultimately I had to get that active money, and I did a lot of deals in a short amount of time because I'm an activity guy, and I know that it's a funnel, right? So the activity you load in the top results in, results at the bottom, right? Yep. So making a lot of money created this other issue of like, okay, well, how do I start to get my money to work for me? And we're going to talk a lot about how you do that. So now the businesses that I'm in, I buy a lot of commercial real estate. I have a ton of apartments across the country, 7 different states. I've been over 800 units in my portfolio, and it's fluctuating because we're buying and selling assets all the time. But now all I do is do large syndications for large apartment complexes, and buy commercial real estate for hold. I also have a coaching company, and some other businesses. So I'm in about 4 or 5 different businesses as well, constantly just looking to add streams of income. And that's ultimately, until you can get your money to work for you, right? You're going to be a slave to the paycheck, and you're going to have to continue to trade your time for money, which time is actually the most valuable asset. And money, as we're going to talk about in future episodes, like money is a currency that is meant to flow, and you need to spend it. You need to invest it. Number 1 in yourself, number 2 in your businesses, and then number 3, and then into assets that pay you. Yeah. Because otherwise you'll be in this rat race forever.
Totally.
So we are super excited to jump into the next episode, because this was a little bit about us and who we are. And now we're going to talk about this rise in consciousness that we all need to have as a collective, because that is the ultimate solution to a lot of the issues that are going on in people's lives. Why anybody is struggling is ultimately like to the level of your standards. Yeah. Right. And you raise your standards and your life will follow. Yeah. And it's that internal temperature that people are keeping way too low, that they just need to turn up and just, bite off more than you can chew and figure out how to chew it. Yeah. But we all need to raise our level of consciousness.
Absolutely. So. You're not going to be prepared for everything. You just got to go. Yeah. Right.
You just got to go.